Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Chinnery. I work for Cornell Cooperative Extension in Troy, New York. And we're here with another one of our Lunch in the Garden programs that we've been doing on Wednesdays at noon. And I'm really happy that you've decided to join us today. We have Marcy and Troy, and I'm out in the countryside. I'm here in Petersburgh, New York at the Elderberry Springs farm in beautiful Rensselaer County. We call these the Taconic Mountains, right, Joe?
Yes.
They're not the Berkshires, they're the Taconics. So it is really a gorgeous place and a gorgeous weather day today. So we're going to talk about elderberries. And Joe McGrath here, who's the owner of the Elderberry Farm, is going to share his PowerPoint presentation. And if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box, and we'll talk about the questions and answers at the end of the presentation. And we will be archiving this program on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, type in Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rensselaer County. And if you spell that all correctly, it will take you to our YouTube channel, and we'll eventually put this program up there so you can review it and see it again. So today I'm here with Joe, and I'm going to turn the program over to him. And we're going to learn about elderberries, which I think are really cool plants. I've planted some at my house and harvested them, but I really haven't learned a lot about them. So I'm very anxious to hear what Joe has to say. So thank you, Joe, and thank you for having me here in your beautiful workshop.
You're welcome, David. So good afternoon, everyone. This is Joe from Elderberry Springs Farm, and thank you for investing the time, on your busy Wednesday, especially during lunchtime. So today is going to be an introduction to elderberries, very basic, but we'll cover some of the myth and the lore of elderberries. It's a very long established plant with a lot of unique traditions to it. We'll talk a little bit about the medicinal uses of the plant, and then we'll talk about the growing aspects of elderberries. So as David said, as questions come up, fire them off. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll do what I can to answer the best way possible. So the first slide here, I've been advised to read this disclaimer just because there's going to be a medicinal talk portion of this PowerPoint. So Elderberry Springs Farm website and the presentation offer information designed for educating people on elderberries and elderflowers. You should not rely on any information on the website or through the presentation as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or a substitute for professional counseling care, advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have any concerns or questions about your health, you should always consult with a physician or other healthcare professional. And thank you for wading through that. I'm very enthusiastic about elderberries. And so I get carried away, and it's good to, I always say talk is cheap, do your own research.
Joe?
Yes.
Okay, you need to put that in the slideshow mode. It's not advancing. We are not seeing that screen. We're just seeing the beginning of it.
Oh,
so David needs to help you out there. And I didn't advance to the first slide.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah. I think it just didn't go into slideshow slideshow mode or whatever. It didn't start.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing and start it over again. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So do you see?
There we go. That looks better already. Now can you go to the next slide? Yeah.
Okay. And now do you see the second one?
No, I do not. Oh, there we go. Now I do. Yep. Perfect.
Good.
Sorry about that.
There we go. Yep, you're ready. You're good to go now.
All right. Well, we're back. These are photos of elderberries almost near maturity. What they look like on the different varieties, but these are downward bending York. The cymes bend down, which is a nice feature. Not all elderberry varieties do that. This makes it a little bit more difficult for the birds to land and consume them. So elderberry history. Elder seeds have been found in archaeological sites that are over 9,000 years old. It's very well documented in Greek and Roman cultures. Hippocrates referred to elderberry as nature's medicine chest. All parts of the plant are used, the roots, the bark, the branches, the leaves, of course, the fruit, the flowers. They're allegedly used for curing respiratory infections, stool softener, wound healing, natural antihistamine, slowing the progress of dementia, immune boosting, anti-inflammatory for arthritis or sciatica pain. Back in Europe, 1200s through 1600s, fleas were very common for humans and livestock and pets. And elderberry was the primary way to fight the flea infestations. There's also functional uses of elderberry. Historically, they were used for arrow shafts because the canes grow very straight and the pith inside can be pushed out and they're hollow. So they're very strong, straight, but lightweight. Very, perfect for aerodynamics. Fire starting, long canes where you get 5 or 6 foot cane, you push out the pith and you have a hollow tube you can blow through to act as a bellows. Hair dye. So the fruit color is a beautiful purple from ripe elderberries. It's a fugitive dye in that it will run eventually. So if you're use it as a dye for wool or cotton or what have you, you get a beautiful color, but eventually it will wash out on you. Whistles, flutes, pop guns, the old type of frog spears, I would call them, but they're spears with 4 prongs on the end, usually laced with a vine or leather, but those are traditionally elderberry canes in basket weaving. So the lore is fascinating, particularly, coming out of United Kingdom and Europe. But in pagan mythology, there was a vegetation goddess named Hild Moher, and that translates to Elder Mother. And the Elder Mother had a unique relationship with elderberry bushes, and she would place a communication spirit called a dryad in every elderberry bush. That was the belief. And so they would always be constantly reporting to her, since she was a vegetation goddess, the health, wealth, and the well-being of the earth was primary to her. And the elderberry bush was the main communication device as to what was going on, or that was the belief. They also believed that an elderberry bush or tree would never be struck by lightning. Hence, they're to this day around houses and barns. Pagans believed that if you physically carried elder wood, leaves, flowers, or berries on your person, that it would help ward off physical attacks. Elder leaves and branches from the doorways and windows would protect those who live within from witches, demons, and sorcerers. And it was taboo to burn an elder tree, and bad luck would befall the person responsible. If you ever heard, each year we do a tremendous amount of pruning and we get large piles. And, the piles will be 30, 40 feet long and 8 feet high. And when they are burnt, it's unlike any other wood with the popping and the hissing, and it's pretty dramatic. But that unique hissing and popping was evidence that there were spirits living in those canes and that they were being forced out by the fire. There's a belief that elderberries were real and lived in the other world, but traveled into our world on the summer solstice. If you hid well enough in an elderberry orchard on the longest sunlight day of the year, you would be able to see them. Well, my wife and I are fascinated with this particular aspect of the lore. And so last summer on the summer solstice, my wife and I hid out in the orchard, and we were actually able to catch a photo here. You're the first audience to see an elderberry fairy. We're very surprised at the purple wings.
What's the fairy's name?
This happens to be Frankie. Frankie the dachshund.
Oh, that's great.
So in continuing on the lore, in order to use the elderberry bush or plant medicinally or for purposes, arrow shafts or spear, you had to ask permission of the local elder spirit within for consent to use a part of the living tree. Burning pith that you can easily push out from the canes would reveal local witches and sorcerers. Elder twigs, if given as a gift during the wedding ceremony, would provide good luck to the newlyweds. And a man and a woman would marry within a year if they drank mead that had been infused with elderflowers. Woodwind instruments made from the elder are said to produce the music that opens the gateway to connect the living world with the spirit world. And elder trees themselves are considered to be feminine, and their flowers, are to be used in facial and body washes, like a mother nurturing a young child. So moving on to elderberry nutrition, elderberries are a really unique fruit. They're high in vitamin C, vitamin A. It's unusual they have vitamin B17 in them. They're high in minerals. You see the list there: calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, etc. High in dietary fibers. Very, very good source of phenolics. We'll be seeing a chart shortly, an ORAC chart, that shows how the elderberry compares to blueberries and strawberries and a lot of other local fruit. So the phenolics are, antioxidants that help reduce damage due to the oxidative stress. A very good source of flavonols, and rich in anthocyanins. So take a look at this ORAC chart, and on the bottom, you'll see on the far right, it's starting with the mangoes and goji berries and progresses through. If you look at the blueberries and raspberries, but then the only thing that would exceed the antioxidant power of the elderberries is the aronia berries. So the alleged elderberry medicinal uses. There's been a tremendous amount of studies over the last couple of decades on cold and flu reactions to taking elderberry. And the medical studies have shown that elderberry in general will not prevent a person from getting a cold or flu, but it greatly reduces the severity and length of that cold or flu. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but what it does is it, in very simple terms, it inhibits the virus from replicating within the human body. So it's kind of fascinating. Heart health. Studies have shown that elderberry juice may reduce the level of fat in the blood, decrease cholesterol. Skin treatments, acne, anti-wrinkles, pain relief. Elderberries is a strong anti-inflammatory. Some doctors recommend its use for sciatica. Immune systems. That's what probably elderberries and elderberry syrup is best known for, is a general immune booster. It's a very strong antiviral. It seems to work well for UTI infections. It acts as a diuretic and causes the kidneys, to flush out the toxins. Allergy relief. A lot of people take this for hay fever. It's very good when people are looking for a natural alternative to over-the-counter allergy relief. Elderberry is a good thing to experiment with. In its residual effects, taking in the morning a couple tablespoons last all day. Digestive health, fighting oxidative stress, as we mentioned, aiding in cancer prevention. Again, it has the B17 vitamin in there that the research is showing more and more reduces the risk of cancer. The B17 does. Aids in mild cognitive impairment. These are recent medical studies, and it's showing that juices like elderberry, in the ones that are close, seem to be a good preventive way to ward off the beginning of dementia. Elderberry education. So our website, elderberrysprings.com, we have an education tab on that. And within that education tab, there are links, direct links to the National Library of Medicine, the National Institute of Health, and the Natural Medicine Journal. And we have instructions on there. The name of elderberry is Sambucus, and the European elderberry is Sambucus nigra, and the American elderberry is Sambucus canadensis. But we highly recommend people to just type in Sambucus and look at all the medical studies that have been done and that come up. It's fascinating, and they're finding new applications every year. So moving on into the planting, growing, and harvesting of elderberries. And we'll show some pictures afterwards, but just side comment, obviously I'm prejudiced, but elderberries are a beautiful plant. If they're planted alone, you can plant them into a hedgerow and they'll make a very nice solid hedgerow, but they're also a nice ornamental, and you can shape them any way that you want. And they have beautiful bilateral leaves, and they're just, again, I'm prejudiced, vested interest, but they're a beautiful plant. The green shiny leaves, and then when they flower into the flower clusters, you get a nice delicate aroma. And then of course the berries come in late August, early September. So they like full sun, good drainage. So there's a belief that elderberries like to like water, and that's partially true. They do not like their feet wet. So you will find elderberries most commonly along drainage ditches or on the side of streams, elevated above the water, but they have good access to moist soil. So they do not like their roots wet. They love to be fed, compost or traditional fertilizers, but they love their food. In the first 2 years of growth, they do not like to compete against weeds. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. After the second year, they choke out the weeds themselves. But it's those first 2 years for establishing them that it really helps keep them weed free. They like good airflow. Elderberries are primarily air pollinated. The flowers are very tiny. Some insects do their part, but they're primarily air pollinated. So it doesn't have to be raging winds, but it's nice that they have gentle breezes, especially during, blossom time, and throughout the year for disease prevention. Row orientation. In this comment is probably more towards a commercial farmer than a home gardener or someone that's homesteading and growing whatever from 1 to 10 or 20 plants. But east-west, we have found to be much better row orientation versus north-south. And that is purely from the aspect of harvesting. So harvesting is an extreme visual task. You take the whole sign, but you only want the blackest berries that have the highest Brix content. They have the highest sugar content. When the rows are faced north-south, when you're in the rows, you can only pick the east side because in the shade and the dark, the west side, the dark ruby that aren't mature enough appear black, and you end up picking unripe berries that don't have the peak of flavor or sugar. If the row orientation is east or west, you can go out early morning, which is the best time, escape that field heat, and pick both sides of the row. So just a little comment there for orientation. Shrub spacing and row spacing. If you want to develop a row, we recommend you initially plant a cutting every 2 feet, and they'll fill in, be a beautiful privacy hedge or, a nice productive hedgerow. For just ornamental shrub spacing, we recommend a minimum of 6 feet apart from one another, and better 8 to 10 feet. and they're very symmetrical. When they mature, they fill out nicely, and it ends up being a very beautiful bush. The commercial varieties easily get 10 to 12 foot high, but you can top them and you can keep them at any height that that's desired. If you want a 4 foot high hedgerow or a 6 foot high ornamental bush, it's no issue. They can be trained well. So cultivar selection, all these comments are specific to Zone 5. So Rensselaer County, Zone 5A up here. And so things are different for people like in the middle part of the United States. But Sambucus nigra is the common elderberry that gets imported into the States for foodstuffs and various other dyes and animal feeds, and there's medicinal uses. That's the European version. Majority of that comes from the Ukraine and Hungary. So it'll be interesting to see what develops now. It's my understanding it comes from the eastern part of Ukraine, which it's not that populated, hasn't seen, you know, the Russian conflict or incursion yet. The Sambucus canadensis is the American variety. On the Northeast commercial cultivars, there's Coomer, Good Barn, Berry Hill, Adams 1, Adams 2, Johns, Kent, Nova, York, Scotia. And I mentioned this because when we first started out, the University of Missouri has done a tremendous amount of ag research on elderberries. And they promote the varieties you see listed below: Bob Gordon, Wildwood, Ranch, Pocahontas. When we trialed those ourselves, we found that they didn't do well in the cold climate. So the Missouri climate is much different. And they have all the instruction for propagating them, but we found that the commercial varieties developed in actually out of Cornell back in 1960 through 62 time frame, out of the Canadian ag research up in Nova Scotia, where Kent and Nova came from in Scotia. Those cold weather varieties do much better commercially. Wild cultivars, it's very easy to propagate elderberry. They're a hardy plant, and it's last 2 weeks of June. You can drive country roads, and the flower blossoms, the cymes, are very unique in elderberry. And once you have initially identified them, it's easy. You can make a mental note of where those plants were, and then go back and get cuttings in the winter or late fall. But we find that the wild cultivars, if you enjoy elderflower, eating elderflowers batter or for making cordials or lemonade, we find the wild cultivars actually have a little bit stronger flavor than the flowers of the commercial cultivars, but they don't yield the berries. They don't have a heavy yield of berries like the commercial cultivars do. But a very easy plant to find, to identify and find. A word of warning, water hemlock. It looks very similar. If you're not intimately familiar with elderberries, the cymes, the flower blossoms of water hemlock look a lot like elderberry. And of course, that's deadly, deadly poisonous. So you need to do your homework first and truly know what an elderberry blossom looks like. And once you do, it's very easy to distinguish from the water hemlock, but to the untrained eye, not so much. Okay. This here is a short video. There's probably no easier plant, ornamental or for medicinal or food use, to establish on your property than elderberry. They're hardy, and let's see if we get the video going here.
Oh, it may not play really well.
This is Joe from Elderberry Springs Farm, along with Marie, who's filming. We're often asked, how do you plant elderberries? It's one of the easiest plants to put out into your garden or homestead. So the cuttings come from us with an angled cut on the bottom, and a flat cut on top, so you keep proper planting orientation, bottom of the ground. It's as easy as cleaning a little bit of earth around, scuffing it up. Elderberries do not like to compete with weeds, so a very simple method is to take a paper plate, make a cross cut right in it, put the cutting through, and in the cutting there's two little nodes. So you want to plant it so the earth is about an inch above those nodes. So you judge that, have your thumb as a stop, press it into that depth, and you are done. So a little bit of dirt over the paper plate, keep it in place. The paper plate will suppress the weeds. The white of the paper will reflect up and give it good growth. And you have planted your first elderberry bush. You can download the elderberry cutting instructions from our website, and it will give you the first, second, third year care procedures. Enjoy.
Oh, that was pretty cool.
In those instructions,
This is Joe from Elderberry Springs Farm, along with Marie, who is filming. We're often.
so those elderberry propagation instructions are under the blog section of our website. So the cultivar propagation, direct planting them as early as possible. Like now is actually a very good time to plant elderberries. When the frost leaves the first 3-4 inches of your soil, stick them in, and they'll do very, very well. Up until that point, you want to keep the cuttings cool, dark, and moist. So a refrigerator is fine. Wrapping a paper towel on the base of the cutting, again, not keeping it in water, just keeping it moist, and literally they're good for many, many weeks. We recommend that you dip the flat top end and the angle cut end in hydrogen peroxide, regular hydrogen peroxide from Walmart, a quick dip. That's for virus prevention. Apple cider vinegar is 2 tablespoons per gallon, but a root hormone, if you desire, or if you believe in the root hormone treatment for your rootings. And dormant oil, just dipping the whole cutting quickly in dormant oil. And that's for, mite prevention. So the first year, mulch them with hardwood chips, newspaper, plastic, whatever you use for mulch to keep that, to suppress the weeds. Do not fertilize those cuttings the first year, and snip off the blossoms. So all the plant's energy goes into developing its root system. Second year is pretty much the same, but you can start off in early April. Again, zone 5, around April 15th, mid-April for the first fertilization. And if you don't have access to compost, 10-10-10 is fine. Snip the blossoms off the second year also, keep them weed-free. Third year fertilization, a little bit more, 1 pound per plant. Now elderberries like their food. Fertilize in mid-April, and then fertilize again just before the flower buds form. Plan on spotted wing Drosophila bird and animal mitigation strategies. Everyone listening to this will have issues with the SWD, the little fruit fly. They deposit their eggs in the unripe elderberries, and they when the elderberry is at mature, at its peak of flavor and sugar, the larvae eat the fruit from inside and destroy it. After your third growing season, during the winter, it's good to prune out all 3-year-old canes, and repeat this each year. Your heavy fruit comes, once the plant is established, comes from the first and second year canes. So this is a little video on a nice pesticide-free approach to stopping the SWD. And bear with us here, seems to be a little bit of a time lag.
Hello, this is Joe from Elderberry Springs Farm, and today we'll show you how to take a pesticide-free approach to saving your stock fruit. So no matter where you live in our country, whether in the north, south, east, special little fruit fly that can saw in through the skin of your fruit when it's unripe, deposits eggs, they create little larvae, worms, they eat the fruit from the inside out right at peak harvest. So no one wants to resort to pesticides. A low-cost, effective approach is to take a deli container, make a bait trap, and place it in amongst your fruit, whether it be raspberries, strawberries, grapes, elderberries. So it is as simple as getting a deli quart container. You can go to your local supermarket, take a soldering iron, and roughly every inch and a half, all the way around circumference, you put solder holes. Now I feel the soldering iron works much better than a drill. The drill tends to shatter the plastic. Once you have the holes all the way around, you put in 6 ounces of solution. The recipe is very simple. It's yeast, sugar, water, and it's on the elderberrysprings.com website under the blog section. You put it in, you monitor it, the directions are there. It's important to put your traps out early. We're on the Vermont-New York border. We find June 10th to June 15th. It's zone 5. It's good to get those initial breeding pairs. If you get the initial breeding pairs, the population doesn't explode on you. So that's it. As an added item, you can make a deluxe XWD trap by putting a hole in the center of the lid, hole off to the side, take a piece of wire, put it through the center hole, put a bend on it, push it up through those 2 holes, a bend on top, and now you have a hanging SWD trap. So from Marie and Joe at Elderberry Springs Farm, enjoy your gardening season. Thank you for your elderberry syrup and plant orders, and just have a fantastic summer. Enjoy. Hello.
All right, and so now we're jumping right into a bird mitigation strategy, and I think you'll enjoy this one.
Hello, this is Joe from Elderberry Springs Farm. I want to introduce you to 2 of my coworkers. This is organic, and this is syrup. We use decoy owls out here to stop the birds from eating the elderberries. So one of the keys we have found for experimentation, 2 owls per 1 acre in 3 different position poles per owl. So every morning we will go out and move organic or syrup to a different position pole and repeat that in the evening. So a good job to deter the birds. And I just want to show you behind the scenes here at Elderberry Orchard. Thank you so much for your syrup orders. Enjoy Labor Day weekend. Oh, this is Joe.
All right, and just wanted to mention on the decoy owls, moving them every 10 hours is key. Otherwise, the birds get used to them. So 3 poles per bird, and just moving them morning, noon, and the following morning. Talk a little bit now about planting, growing, and harvesting. You only want to pick the cymes with the dusky black berries. So it's an extreme visual task. It's hard unless you have the proper light. Very dark maroon berries are not ripe. They don't have that true berry flavor or the high sugar content. And so bright light helps. Absolutely no sunglasses because they just change the shade. Preferably early morning before that field heat builds. And they're a very easy fruit to harvest. You just snip the entire cyme. And there's a video coming up showing this, but unlike strawberries or blueberries where you're have the labor to pick the individual berries, you can, cover quite amount of elderberry plantings just with a couple people. Destemming, there's and we will show a destemming table or a garbling table later, but there's 2 main methods. For the home gardener, what works very well is to pick the cymes, put them in a paper bag and freeze them. Next day or in a couple days, take and bang that bag against the side of a pail or a house or your kitchen counter, and the berries will fall off the little stems, and you'll be able to just pour them out and very easily separate the small stems and larger stems from the berries. So that works well for the homestead use. For commercial use, having a destemmer table or a garbling table works well. It's a stainless steel mesh, and you rub the cymes onto the mesh, the stems and the vines, everything stays up top, the berries drop through, and it's easy to get very clean berries. And then once you have your clean berries, you freeze can or you process them as you see fit.
Let me see if I can turn up the volume.
Sure. So a little delay here. David is trying to increase the volume on the presentation.
What's that gonna do? It doesn't want to help me. Well, doesn't look like it wants to because you have that. Let's see. Turn that off. Let's see if that works. Okay.
Okay, so this next video is actually showing the harvesting of the elderberries. Last couple of weeks of August, first week and a half of September.
Hello, this is Joe from Elderberry Springs Farm, out here showing you the picker's view of elderberry picking. So I'm in a little clump here right now that has the full spectrum. Picking elderberries is an extreme visual dependency task. So right here we have green berries, we have ripe dusky black berries, we have red maroon berries, and some more dusky black berries. So they all white ripen at different times. And you need to be able to go through and just harvest the dusky black ones. If I can do this one-handed. Put it right into the harvest tote. And the dusky black ones have the highest bricks, the highest sugar content. And all the, the peak of the medicinal qualities of elderberry. So that's it for today. Thank you from Elderberry Springs Farm.
All right. And this right here is the garbling table or the destemming table. Ours are quite large, and 2 to 4 people can work one of our tables, and the berries fall into a big tote underneath. But just rubbing them, and it goes quick. And that concludes today's presentation, the PowerPoint, at least portion on elderberries. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it's my personal belief every home, like it did in the 1800s and 1700s, early North America, should have elderberry. The medicinal qualities, the flavor, there's so many uses. It's a hardy plant, just made for our particular climate. And thank you. Thank you for wading through this presentation.
Well, thank you, Joe. I think you did a fantastic job. And I've got a couple questions, but I'm going to see if Marcy has any questions in the chat box.
There are a few questions in the chat box. And Joe, thank you. It was a great presentation. Do you want me to just go ahead and start firing the questions to you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. This one writer has lots of questions all in one, so I'm just going to kind of do one at a time here. So they're wondering, can you transplant an established plant easily?
Yes, you can. They're very hardy. Our recommendation is as early in spring as possible or late fall before the frost. But yes, you can transplant and they'll do well. For a mature plant, it's nice to have prepared, the old saying, $1 million hole for a $20 tree. Well, that applies here. So just have a lot of compost, biochar, and it will take well for you.
Okay, great. Can you tell us which are the best varieties and what are their characteristics?
Like maybe for a home garden?
I assume that's, yeah.
It depends on what you're seeking. So if you're after the fruit, if you're after berries, for this region, what does very well is York, Nova, Kent, the Vermont varieties of Coomer, Berry Hill, and Good Barn. So those all do very well in our climate, and actually even colder. Zone 4, they'll do well. I don't know about zone 3, but zone 4 and 5, those are the varieties. And if you're after elderflowers, a lot of the European ancestry people like to collect the elderflowers and batter them and fry them. You know, it's a delicacy. It tastes very good. Or if you want to dehydrate the flowers and use them for tea or lemonade, I actually would recommend you searching out the wild varieties in Rensselaer, Columbia County. Again, the plants are easy to spot on the country roads. About the third week in June till July 4th, and you'll see these magnificent, large clusters of white blossom flowers. And if you're after elderflower for your home, I would recommend that over the commercial varieties.
Okay. If you cut the whole plant back, will it easily regrow, or should you just cut back the dead canes?
Very good question. So if you cut an entire plant back to grade, you know, to the soil level, it will absolutely come back stupendously healthy, but you will lose all the flower and berry production in that year that you cut it back. So say you cut it back January, February, you will not get any yield of flowers or berries to the following year, but the plant will do well and it's very healthy to do. If you're looking for yield every year, and it's best to go in there by hand with loppers or you know, Felco hand shears, and just cut out all of the 3-year-old wood down to grade. And then you will still get yield during that growing season.
Okay, that makes sense. If you're doing a row, is it better to use one variety or vary the varieties?
Very good question. Elderberries are not self-pollinating. So you need, for high yields, you need two varieties close by. Now, single elderberry plants, again, due to the air pollination, more often than not will get pollinated. But if you want to maximize your yields, 2 different varieties within 40, 50 feet of one another. So commercial farmers usually alternate rows. We do York Nova. Smaller for residential gardening or homesteaders usually alternate within the same row. So, you know, one York Nova, or Kent or Coomer. But your productivity will be greatly enhanced if you have 2 varieties close to one another.
Okay. This person is asking where they can find the recipe for trapping the SWD. That was on your website, correct?
Yes, under the blog section.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any difficulty, folks, in finding that, just email us at marie@elderberrysprings.com, and you know, I can send that off to you.
Someone asked if you could please repeat the east, west, and north, south information.
Okay, so again, for commercial farming, when you have it in a row, we have found that the growth is good with either orientation for the plants. A lot of studies recommend the north-south orientation to maximize the sunlight. We have found that becomes a problem during harvest. So you have your labor arranged in the morning. It's cool. You want to get those berries picked and done early, you know, go through both sides of the row. And when you have a north-south orientation, you can only do the east side of the row from, you know, daybreak to noon, because the light is shining. On the west side of that row of the north-south orientation, it's shadowed. And that shadow raises havoc with being able to determine when the berries are properly ripe. Whereas in east-west orientation, you start picking, say, the north side of the row, or the south side of the row, but you have equal light, you can see well, and you can harvest much more efficiently with the east-west orientation. With the north-south, you don't want to be out there in the field heat past noon, just picking the opposite side of the road that you couldn't see in the morning. It's not good for fruit quality.
Do you have a nursery that you like, Joe? That you recommend?
We sell cuttings. We sell York Nova cuttings. You can order them on our website, elderberrysprings.com. This is really within the next week. Our cutting season is January through the end of March. And it's warm this year, so we're coming in at the tail end. So if people are interested in cuttings, they should order now. We could probably squeak them out, but we're really at the end of the cutting season at this point.
Someone's asking what the hours that you're open to buy plants or products, and your location in Petersburgh, your address.
Sure, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week.
Wow.
Literally, there's someone always here. So email us, set a time. You're more than welcome. Our address is 806 Taconic Trail, Taconic Trail. That's Route 2 headed into Massachusetts. So we're right before the Massachusetts line. There's a sign, Elderberry Springs Farm, right on the Taconic Trail. So 806 Taconic Trail. Email us, set up a time, let us know what you're interested in, and we'll have the cuttings ready for you.
Okay. Could you please repeat the spacing between each one as compared to the spacing between the rows?
Yes. So if you want to establish a hedgerow, we recommend 2 foot on center spacing. So within the row, the cuttings planted 2 feet from one another. Because the plants get so large, the next row, we recommend a minimum of 14 feet. So 14 feet from center to center. So 2 foot within the row, 14 foot to the next row.
Okay. Does the ornamental black lace sambucus have the same nutrition as the commercial varieties? Sambucus?
Good question. I do not know the answer to that. I'm not familiar with the black lace. I'm not sure if it's Niagara or a variety of canadensis or another Sambucus variety. I'm not familiar with it.
Do you have problems with deer foraging?
Oh, extreme. Extreme. So this is a problem with elderberries. Everything goes for them. From red squirrels to chipmunks to turkey to bear to deer, every bird, everything, porcupines, everything goes after elderberry. So the problem with the deer is primarily in the winter. They will come in depending on the winter and the amount of snow cover, but they will graze those cuttings right to grade. And if you're trying to establish elderberries on your property, they'll set you back, a good year or two. Depending on how much you plant, you definitely need fencing to stop the deer damage in the winter. But fencing helps in general all around because everything goes after elderberries.
When should they put out the traps for the fruit flies?
In this area, you want to start early, right around June 10th. Now, this year may be a little bit warmer, and so you may want to kick that up to June 3rd. But we recommend every 25 feet. I don't know if that was mentioned in the video, quart containers. And it really works well. Now, it's labor intensive, folks. You need to change out that bait lure recipe every 10 to 14 days, but it works well. And you can, I highly recommend a magnifying glass and checking your traps, and you'll see them. The SWD, there's a black dot on the wings of the males, and they have reddish orange eyes. You'll clearly be able to identify them.
Okay, there's just a few more questions, so we'll just do these real quick. How do you identify third-year wood?
Real easy by diameter in, I'm probably mispronouncing this, but by the population of lenticels on them. So they have little breathing nodes all on the canes. As the canes mature, those little breathing lenticle nodes multiply exponentially. So you'll see a high population of like little bumps on the cane on 3-year-old wood in the diameter. So a good rule of thumb is anything 3/4 of an inch and larger, trim out. So the diameter is directly related to the age of the cane.
Okay. Can you mix wild elderberries with cultivars in your yard?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Someone else is asking if they can visit your farm. Where can we find your products, and can we visit your farm? So where else? I know you said your products were sold someplace else.
Yes, Chatham Berry Farm has them. Country store, Algermont Country Store. A lot of it we sell to wholesalers, and I should know this, but I don't know where they end up on retail shelves. But you're again, email us, and you're more than welcome to come and visit the farm. I can give you a quick tour through the orchard. The time's a premium, but I can always walk you out there, answer your questions, and we can. I think you might enjoy it.
Okay. Somebody did comment that black lace is usually just ornamental in that other question. So that kind of follows up to that. And if you're buying cuttings, how many until the first harvest? If you're buying cuttings, how many years until the first harvest?
Very good question. 3 years.
Okay.
So the first 2 years, you want to snip all the blossoms off, keep them weed free, and you'll get your first harvest the 3rd year. But then you'll see it dramatically jump in yield year 4 on up.
Perfect. There's many people saying like, thank you for the presentation, and they enjoyed it. And that looks like that's all the questions. And Joe, you've been great. I learned a lot of things.
Oh, you're very welcome. And again, folks, thank you for investing the time. Elderberries are exciting. You get the plants on your property, and you'll never regret it.
Can you just tell us a little more about the syrup and the products?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
So,
what do you actually sell?
Elderberry Springs makes a traditional syrup. Elderberries is our #1 ingredient, and we make the traditional with cane sugar and organic lemon. We also make a keto version with monk fruit sweetener, so your blood sugar does not, so a sugar-free version, so your blood sugar doesn't spike. We have dehydrated elderberries, dehydrated elderflowers, and elderberry powder, which is ground dehydrated elderberries.
Wow.
So those are the products. They're usually 8-ounce packages for the elderflower and dried elderberries, 4 ounces for the powder, and 8-ounce bottles for the syrup. And yeah, thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Joe. Marcy, you think we have any other questions, or are we good?
Yeah, no, we're good. We answered all of them, and there's like many people, saying they bought like they're saying thank you. Some bought native plants a few years ago. It was a wonderful presentation. And they learned so much. Yeah, so I think that wraps it up.